The first time I felt the weight of the world settle on my shoulders, it was because of a tiny hand gripping mine. Her fingers were small, delicate, and perfect, like they had been carved just for me. I looked down at her, the baby I had adopted in secret, and felt something stir deep in my chest, something fierce and unyielding. Love, pure and immediate, coursed through me, a force I hadn't expected and couldn't resist. But the world didn't see it that way. I remember the night it all began, the night I was cast out of the only home I had ever known. The sky outside my bedroom window was a bruised mix of violet and black, the wind tugging at the curtains as if it wanted to pull me into the darkness. Rain tapped against the glass like tiny drums, a rhythm that mirrored the pounding of my heart. I had been laughing moments before, cradling her in my arms, telling her a story I had made up about stars that danced across the sky. Then the door opened. His shadow stretched across the floor, long and sharp. My husband's eyes cold, hard, full of a fury I had never seen before fixed on me. "What have you done?" he demanded. His voice wasn't loud, but it was enough to make my blood run cold. It wasn't the words themselves. It was the accusation, the disappointment, the way the world seemed to narrow until there was nothing but his judgment. I adopted her," I whispered. The words sounded fragile even to my own ears. "You what?" His voice finally broke, sharp as a knife. "Without telling me. Without asking me. I didn't ask permission because she needed me," I said, my voice trembling. "She doesn't have anyone else." I couldn't wait. For a moment, the room was heavy with silence, broken only by the faint hiss of rain against the glass. Then came the slam of the door. My heart cracked with each echo. I stood frozen, the baby still nestled against my chest, feeling the rhythm of her heartbeat, as if it were a lifeline, a tether to the world I still had left. I had nowhere to go. Every street outside was wet, empty, and unwelcoming. My phone lay on the floor, useless against the storm raging inside me. And then I heard a sound that didn't belong. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't the wind. It was something else. Something deliberate, a soft rustle from the trees just beyond the edge of my yard. I froze. The baby stirred and let out a small, tentative cry. I shushed her, trying to tell myself it was just my imagination. But it wasn't. There was a present something watching me from the shadows. Something that made the hair on the back of my neck rise, and my pulse accelerate in ways I didn't understand. I remembered the dreams I had been having for weeks. Strange, vivid visions of a forest bathed in silver light, where the trees seemed to breathe and whisper. Sometimes I saw a figure, a man, tall and impossibly strong, with eyes that glowed like embers in the dark. He called to me, though I couldn't hear his voice. And each time I woke up, my chest ached as if I had lost something precious I hadn't yet met. Standing in my tiny, half-lit living room, I realized the dreams were more than dreams. Something was real. Something powerful was near, and I could feel it in the way the shadows moved, the way the air shifted, heavy with expectation. I hugged the baby closer, whispering promises I wasn't sure I could keep. It's okay. Mommy's here. I won't let anything hurt you." I had barely finished the words when I heard the knock. Not at the door, not even on the walls, but somewhere in the room, gentle yet insistent, as though the darkness itself had reached out to touch me. My heart leapt into my throat. I wanted to scream, to run, but my legs refused to obey. The knock came again, and this time I could swear it had a rhythm, like a heartbeat, not mine, not the baby's, but something else. Something alive. My eyes scanned the room, searching for the source. The shadows in the corners seemed to shift and sway, stretching into shapes I couldn't name. One shadow, taller than any other, seemed to linger near the doorway, as if waiting for permission to step forward. I felt drawn to it, even as fear tightened around my chest. My instincts told me to run, yet something deeper, something older than logic, told me to stay. The air felt electric, charged with a presence I couldn't yet define. And then I heard it. A voice. Not a spoken voice, not words I could understand, but a resonance that seemed to hum through my bones. "You have chosen love," it said, though I could not hear it with my ears. "And for that, you have been tested." I stumbled back, clutching the baby tighter. Her small eyes opened wide, reflecting the flickering candlelight. And for a moment, I felt like the world had paused. Then the shadow moved. Not like a human, not like any animal I had ever seen. It flowed forward, solidifying, coalescing into the figure from my dreams. The tall man, with eyes like smoldering coals, stood before me, strong, commanding, alpha. I wanted to speak, but my voice failed. The storm outside raged on, thrashing the world with wind and rain. Yet in that room, there was only him, only the pull of something ancient and powerful. The baby stirred again, sensing the shift in the air, and I realized that nothing would ever be the same. A chill ran down my spine. The night had begun as any other, yet it had brought me to the edge of something unimaginable. My ordinary life, the life I thought I knew, was over. And in the shadows, watching, waiting, the figure I had dreamed of, the alpha of a world I hadn't yet entered, was about to change everything. I didn't know if I was ready. I didn't know if I could survive. But deep inside, beneath the fear, beneath the uncertainty, I felt it, the unmistakable pull of destiny, of power, and of a love that could shatter worlds. And then he spoke. Finally, his voice a whisper of fire against the storm. "You have chosen her. Now, you must choose yourself." The storm had passed, but its aftermath left a tremor in the air I couldn't shake. I sat on the edge of the baby's crib, brushing a soft curl from her forehead, and tried to tell myself it had been nothing, just a coincidence, a trick of the wind or the stress of the night before. But deep down, I knew better. Something had shifted. Something unseen had entered my life, and it wasn't going to leave quietly. Even in the light of day, the house felt wrong. The shadows lingered longer than they should, pooling in corners and stretching across walls like dark fingers. Sunlight fell through the curtains in patterns that didn't match the furniture, and the faintest whisper of movement brushed past me when no one else was there. I would swear I heard the softest breathing behind me, only to turn and find empty rooms staring back. At first, I tried to ignore it. I focused on the baby, naming her little triumphs, listening to her laugh and coos. That should have been enough to anchor me. But the unease clung, insistent, like fog that refuses to lift. It was subtle at first, shadows that seemed to move independently, a sensation of being watched. But it grew in intensity. I would catch glimpses out of the corner of my eye. A figure vanishing behind the doorway, a glint of eyes reflecting the morning light. My heart would jump each time, and a cold dread settled in my chest, heavier than the storm ever had. I started noticing the whispers. At first, I thought it was the baby's imagination, the gurgling coos she made in her sleep, forming words in my mind that weren't there. But the whispers didn't fade when she woke. They came in the quietest moments, between breaths, between heartbeats. Voices that seemed to speak my name, or warn me of things I couldn't yet understand. The words were always just out of reach, like echoes of something ancient trying to reach me through the veil of ordinary life. I tried to tell myself I was imagining it, that stress and fear were making me see and hear things, that the encounters were getting harder to dismiss. Objects moved slightly from where I left them. Lights flickered with no explanation. And sometimes I would catch a scent smoky, earthy, familiar, yet impossible to place. It was like someone had stepped into the room and vanished before I could confirm it. The neighbors seemed to sense it too, though I could never be sure. They avoided my eyes when I passed, their smiles polite but strained. Dogs in the area barked at nothing, stopping mid-growl as if someone or something had frozen them in place. Even the birds seemed to hush when I walked past, as though nature itself recognized the shift in the air. Then there were the dreams. They had returned, more vivid than ever, and I could no longer dismiss them as mere imagination. I would find myself standing in a forest bathed in silver light, the trees taller and more menacing than I remembered. Shadows clung to the trunks and slithered across the mossy ground like living creatures. And always, he was there, the tall figure with eyes that glowed like embers, watching, waiting, speaking to me without words. I would wake in the middle of the night, my heart racing, the baby crying beside me as if sensing my fear. The storm didn't end that night. It only grew louder, wilder, like the world itself was warning me that nothing would ever be the same again. Rowan lay half-conscious in my arms, his body trembling with pain, his blood mixing with the rain as thunder split the sky. Around us, the forest glowed with faint red eyes. The crescent order watched, waiting, circling. I could feel their hunger pressing in from every direction. "Stay with me," I whispered, brushing his hair back from his face. "Please, Rowan, don't you dare leave me now." He gave a weak, pained laugh. "You never listen, do you?" "Not to liars," I said, voice breaking. A faint smirk ghosted across his lips. "Then you'll fit just fine. Among wolves." Before I could answer, one of the order lunged forward, a blur of movement and claws. I threw myself over Rowan, bracing for impact, but instead of pain, I felt something else. Heat. A pulse of fire surged from my chest, bursting outward in a blinding light. The air around us cracked like glass. The creature was thrown backward, slamming into a tree with a howl. Then silence. Every pair of red eyes in the darkness blinked out at once. I stared down at my trembling hands. Sparks of white fire danced over my skin before fading into faint, shimmering veins of gold. Rowan coughed weakly, his eyes fluttering open. "Lila, what did you just do?" I don't know," I stammered, heart racing. "I didn't mean to." He gritted his teeth and pushed himself up, wincing. "You called it. The Alpha's fire. Your birthright. My what?" He met my gaze, and for a heartbeat, everything else vanished. The storm, the pain, the danger. Just him and me, standing at the edge of something neither of us understood. His hand rose, trembling, and brushed my cheek. "You shouldn't have that kind of power. It could destroy you." The warmth of his touch cut through the cold like sunlight. "Then maybe you should have let me stay ordinary." He let out a rough laugh that ended in a groan. "There's nothing ordinary about you, Layla." For a moment, the air between us thickened, humming with something I couldn't name. My pulse raced, matching his. The rain fell slower, heavier, as though time itself had started to bend around us. He looked at me like he'd been fighting it for years, whatever this was. And I realized I had too. I reached up, fingertips brushing the side of his neck where the veins still glowed faintly gold from my touch. He closed his eyes, leaning into my hand like he couldn't help it. "I should hate you," I whispered. "You should," he said softly. "But you don't." The words cut through me, raw and true. I didn't. I couldn't. Some part of me, maybe the part that had known him long before this life, was bound to him in a way that defied reason. "Rowan," I breathed, my voice trembling. He looked at me, his golden eyes darkened by something deeper than fear. If I touch you again, I won't be able to stop. Then don't stop. The space between us disappeared. He cupped my face in his blood-stained hands, his breath warm against my skin. The world shrank to the sound of rain, and the thundering rhythm of two hearts that no longer beat separately. When his forehead touched mine, everything inside me ignited the fire, the fear, the longing I'd buried under years of trying to be good, safe, normal. We weren't supposed to feel this. Human and wolf, light and shadow, daughter of the hunted, son of the cursed. But as his thumb traced the curve of my jaw, I stopped caring about what was forbidden. I wanted him. Not the protector, not the traitor. Him. Rowan. His lips brushed mine. Not fully, just enough to set every nerve in my body alight. I could taste the storm on his breath, the ache of something older than love and sharper than fear. Then, just as I leaned closer, a crack ripped through the air. Not thunder. Gunfire. Rowan jerked back, eyes wide, his body spinning toward the trees. Down! I dropped as another shot split the air, splintering the trunk beside us. Bark exploded over my shoulder. Who? I started. Hunters, he growled. Human ones. He grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the ridge, every movement a wince of pain. They must have followed the order. We need to move. But you're bleeding. I've survived worse. His voice was hard now, the tenderness replaced by that dangerous edge I'd first seen in him. Lila, if they catch you, they'll drag you to the council before the moon rises. They'll use your blood to open the gate. We ran, our footsteps splashing through the mud, the shouts of men echoing behind us. I caught flashes of silver rifles through the trees' moonlight, glinting off bullets meant for things that shouldn't exist. The rain fell heavier, blurring the world into motion and light. Rowan pulled me close against him, his breath ragged. We're almost there. To where? He didn't answer. A flash of movement ahead, a flicker of shadow too fast to be human. Another Wolf. But this one wasn't from the Order. I could feel it in the pull of the bond, the faint hum beneath my ribs. Rowan's eyes widened. No, not her. Her? I asked, chest heaving. From the trees stepped a woman tall, striking, with silver eyes that glowed like the moon. Her hair clung to her face, her clothes soaked through. But her presence was unmistakable. She looked between Rowan and me, her lips curling into a cruel, knowing smile. So it's true, she said, her voice smooth as glass. You finally found her. Rowan stiffened. Tessa, don't. She tilted her head. Your little human flame. The Alpha's daughter. Her gaze slid to me, cold and curious. I wondered what kind of girl could make you betray your own pack. The wind howled through the trees, scattering leaves around us. Rowan stepped in front of me, shoulders tense, wounded but defiant. Leave her out of this. Tessa laughed softly, almost pitying. Oh, Rowan. You still don't understand, do you? She raised her hand, and light flared between her fingers, crimson and cruel. I felt it before I saw it, a rush of dark energy twisting through the air. She is the key, Tessa whispered. And if I can't have her alive? She snapped her wrist. A blast of red light shot, straight toward me. Rowan lunged, and the world exploded into fire. The storm had been brewing for days inside me and outside. The skies above, Ridge Hollow, turned the color of bruised steel, and the wind carried the scent of rain and danger. Every instinct in me screamed that something terrible was coming. Luca had been distant since the night we almost know. I couldn't even finish the thought. The memory of his hand brushing against mine, the way his eyes burned with unspoken feeling, haunted me. But so did the way he pulled away right after. vanishing into the night like a ghost. Now, 3 days later, I stood by the old bridge where the forest met the edge of the village, the place where we first truly saw each other. The air felt heavy, charged with something alive and wild. I heard him before I saw him. The low rustle of leaves, the sound of boots crunching gravel. Then his voice, deep and roughened by something I couldn't name. Amara. My name on his lips sounded like both a warning and a prayer. I turned. He was standing a few paces away, his eyes catching the dying light of the storm like twin embers. He looked tortured, his hair damp, his jaw clenched, his shoulders tense as if he'd been holding the world on his back. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his tone cutting through the rising wind. "Then why are you here?" I snapped, my voice trembling more from hurt than anger. "You've been avoiding me. You promised you'd explain about the night in the woods, about the wolves, about you, and instead you disappeared." He flinched, as if every word struck him like a blow. "I was trying to protect you." "Protect me?" I laughed bitterly. "By keeping me in the dark while everything around me falls apart. By leaving me to think I imagined it all." Lightning cracked across the horizon, and for a heartbeat, the world lit up in white fire. In that flash, I saw something move behind him, something darker than shadow. He noticed it too. His head snapped toward the trees, his body tensing. "They're here," he muttered. "Who?" Before he could answer, a low growl echoed through the forest. It wasn't just one. It was many. My stomach dropped. Out of the tree line emerged figures, 4, 5, maybe more eyes glowing faintly gold in the dark. Wolves, but not ordinary ones. Larger, meaner. Their presence radiated power and fury. "Luca," I whispered. "What are they?" He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped in front of me, his shoulders broad, his stance protective. "Run back to the house. Don't stop. I'm not leaving you." He turned to me, his eyes now burning brighter than the lightning. "Amara, listen to me. This isn't a fight you can survive. They want me. Not you." But one of the wolves snarled, a deep, guttural sound that vibrated through the ground. "She carries his blood," it hissed, its voice distorted, half human, half beast. "She belongs to the curse." My pulse froze. What did it just say? I breathed. Luca didn't look back. "Go!" he roared, and before I could move, he leapt forward faster than humanly possible dot in a blur of motion and light. He shifted. The sound of bones reshaping, the tearing of fabric, the flash of fur and fang. It all happened in an instant. And there he was, a massive, silver-grey wolf with eyes that burned the same deep amber as Luca's. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering in my throat. It was one thing to suspect, to dream, but seeing him, was something else entirely. The fight that followed was chaos made flesh. Growls, claws, flashes of silver against the rain. Luca fought like something ancient, every movement filled with purpose and rage. But they were too many. One lunged at his side. Another pinned him for a second before he tore free. Blood darkened the ground. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. This was Luca, my Luca caught between the man I'd come to care for, and the creature he'd always been hiding. "Stop!" I screamed, running forward before I even thought it through. "Leave him alone." The nearest wolf turned its glowing eyes on me. Its lips peeled back. "You shouldn't exist," it growled. The Alpha's daughter should have been dead long ago. The world spun. Alpha's daughter. It couldn't be talking about me. Before I could make sense of it, the creature lunged. I closed my eyes, expecting pain, but instead felt warmth. heavy and fierce. Luca had thrown himself between us. The sound of impact, his snarl, the sharp cry that followed, it all blurred together. When I opened my eyes again, the other wolves were retreating into the trees, vanishing into the storm like smoke. Luca stumbled, blood streaking his arm, his chest heaving. The glow in his eyes dimmed as he shifted back into human form, collapsing to his knees. I ran to him, catching his face in my hands. "Luca, please, stay with me." He looked at me, his lips trembling. "You weren't supposed to know this way." "Know what?" "That you're one of us." The words cut through me like ice. "What are you saying?" He reached for my hand, his touch weak but warm. "You carry alpha blood, Amara. You're not just caught in this fight, you are the fight." Rain poured down around us, and thunder cracked like the sky itself was breaking apart. Everything I thought I knew about him, about myself, about the world shattered in a single heartbeat. And as his hand slipped from mine, his last whisper was the one that broke me completely. "They're coming for you next." The forest swallowed me whole that night, when Luca fell. When his body hit the mud, and the last spark of light faded from his eyes, something inside me cracked. The rain blurred everything, the trees, the earth, even my tears. I remember screaming his name until my throat burned, but the storm devoured every sound. And then, silence. The kind of silence that feels alive, like it's listening. I tried to move him, tried to drag him toward shelter, but his weight was too much and my strength too little. His pulse was faint, barely there, but there was something else, something humming beneath his skin. Power. That was when the voices began, soft at first, almost gentle, carried by the wind. "Alpha's daughter," they whispered, as if the forest itself were mocking me. "The bloodline breathes again." I stumbled backward, clutching the soaked earth, the sound echoing inside my skull. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice trembling. But no one answered, at least, not in words. The ground beneath me shuddered. Somewhere in the distance a howl rose, deep and mournful. Another answered it. Then another. I ran. Branches whipped my face, roots clawed at my boots. The storm had turned the path to a river of mud. But I didn't stop until my lungs screamed for air. I didn't know where I was going, only that something was chasing me. Something older than my fear. When I finally stopped, I found myself standing before the old chapel at the edge of the hollow. The one no one dared to visit. Its roof sagged. Its doors hung open like a mouth mid-scream. Every story in town said it was cursed. That's exactly why I went inside. It smelled of dust and old wood, of forgotten prayers. Lightning flickered through the broken stained glass, painting the pews in fractured colors. And in the center aisle, beneath the shattered altar, something glowed faintly. A book. It was bound in dark leather, the edges weathered, the surface carved with symbols that pulsed like they were alive. My hands trembled as I reached for it. The moment my fingers brushed the cover, a jolt of warmth shot up my arm. Images blurred, violent, ancient flashed through my mind. Wolves under a blood moon. A man with silver eyes kneeling before a woman who looked like me. A child crying as fire devoured the forest. Then a voice low, powerful, achingly familiar. "My daughter. They will hunt you for what you carry." I stumbled back. The book clutched to my chest. The air in the chapel grew heavier, colder. I could feel it then. The faint pulse beneath my skin. The echo of something awakening inside me. Was it what Luca meant? Was this what the wolves had been chasing all along? Before I could think further, the door behind me creaked. I spun, heart pounding. A figure stepped in tall, wrapped in a dark coat, face shadowed. I couldn't see their eyes, but I felt their presence, heavy and commanding. "Amara," the voice said, calm and deep. "You shouldn't be here." I froze. "Who are you?" The figure stepped closer, and in the dim light, I caught the faint glint of silver hair and eyes that burned like embers. "Someone who has waited a very long time to find you." I took a step back. "Stay away from me." They didn't move. "You don't remember me, do you?" "You wouldn't. Your mother hid you well." "My mother's dead." His eyes softened, almost sorrowful. "She thought she was protecting you. But hiding the Alpha's heir doesn't end the bloodline, it only delays the war." The book in my hands pulsed as if it recognized his voice. "You're lying," I whispered. He smiled faintly, though there was nothing kind in it. "You feel it already, don't you? The way the storm listens to your heartbeat. The way the shadows part when you speak. That's the call of your blood. And whether you want it or not, it will answer soon." "Why should I believe any of this?" He sighed. "Because the one you trust most is dying because of you." The words hit me like a blade. "Luca, his wound won't heal while your bond remains broken," the stranger said softly. "You think your love for him is forbidden? It's worse than that. It's cursed. The Alpha's heir cannot love the hunter who swore to destroy her bloodline." I shook my head. "No, you're lying. Luca saved me. He protected me." "Of course he did," the man said, "because even cursed hearts still remember how to love." He stepped closer, his hand brushing the book I clutched. "Read it. It will tell you the truth. But when you do, nothing will be the same." Before I could speak, lightning struck the steeple. The sound was deafening. The entire chapel shuddered, dust and splinters raining from above. I fell to my knees, shielding the book. When I looked up again, the stranger was gone, vanished like mist. Only one thing remained where he'd stood, a single silver wolf's fang, glinting faintly in the dark. I held it, my hands trembling. The moment my skin touched it, I felt a heartbeat, not mine, not Luca's. Something else. Something ancient. And then, faintly, from somewhere beyond the forest, came a whisper carried by the storm. "Find the circle of blood before the next moon, or lose him forever." The wind died as suddenly as it had risen. Rain softened into a whisper. For the first time in days, I felt something cut through the fear. A flicker of purpose. If there was even a chance Luca was still alive, I'd find him. If I truly carried alpha blood, I'd learn to use it. And if destiny wanted me to break, then I'd make sure I broke the curse instead. The forest had changed since that night. Or maybe it was me. The air felt heavier now, alive with secrets I could almost touch. Every shadow carried whispers. Every gust of wind felt like it remembered my name. The old chapel had burned to the ground after the lightning strike. But I escaped with the book, the one that seemed to pulse like a living heart whenever I opened it. For 3 nights, I followed the faint silver trail the book revealed under moonlight. It led me deep into the mountains, far from Ridge Hollow. I didn't know what I was looking for, only that it kept whispering one word in my dreams. Luca. I hadn't seen him since the attack. Every heartbeat since then had been filled with guilt and longing, tangled like roots inside me. He had protected me when he should have run. And now he was paying for it. On the 4th night, I found the cave. It was hidden behind a waterfall, its mouth veiled by mist. The moment I stepped inside, the air grew cold, sharp with the scent of blood and pine. The sound of dripping water echoed through the darkness, rhythmic as a heartbeat. And then I felt it. That familiar pulse of energy that always came before he appeared. My breath caught. Luca? A shadow stirred at the edge of the cave. The flicker of movement sent my pulse racing. Then, from the dark, he stepped into the moonlight. He was alive, but barely. His shirt was torn, his skin marked with healing wounds that looked like claw slashes. His hair was damp, his eyes darker than I remembered, storm grey, ringed with exhaustion and pain. When he saw me, he froze. For a moment, silence filled the cave, heavy and aching. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, his voice low and hoarse. I swallowed hard. "You said that the last time, and I almost lost you." His gaze flicked away. "You still might." I stepped closer, the sound of my boots echoing softly. "They said you were dying." He gave a humorless smile. "They said worse things about me before. Most of them true." I didn't laugh. I couldn't. I saw the blood still crusted on his arm, the tremor in his hands. "You need help." "What I need," he said sharply, "is for you to leave before they sent you." "Them?" He looked toward the mouth of the cave, where moonlight spilled across the stone. "The shadow pack. The ones who attacked us. They're hunting you now, not me." "Because of my blood," I whispered. He nodded once. "They know who you are, Amara. What you are." I clutched the book to my chest. "Then you know too." He flinched. "I always did." Those words landed like a blade. "You lied to me. I tried to protect you." His voice cracked, raw. "You think I wanted to keep secrets? You have no idea what's coming for you, Amara. You were never meant to live in the human world. They'll never stop until they have you or you learn to fight back." "Then teach me." The words came out before I even thought them. He blinked, caught off guard. "You don't know what you're asking." "Yes, I do," I said, stepping closer until I could feel the faint heat radiating off him. "I saw what you did that night, what you became. And if I carry alpha blood like they say, then I can become something too. I can protect myself. Protect you." He shook his head. "You don't understand. The power in your veins, it's not like mine. It doesn't serve. It consumes. Once it wakes, it won't stop until it claims everything you are. Then I'll control it. You can't. I have to." My voice cracked. "Because if I don't, they'll win. And you'll die." He looked at me for a long moment, every muscle in his jaw tight. Then slowly he stepped closer. His hand lifted hesitant, almost reverent, and brushed my cheek. "Do you have any idea what it's doing to me?" He whispered. "Standing this close to you, knowing what you are. Knowing I should walk away, but I can't." My heart stuttered. His eyes weren't just grey anymore, they shimmered faintly gold, a reflection of the wolf within. "Then don't walk away," I said softly. For a heartbeat, the cave was silent. The only sound was our breathing, fast and uneven. The distance between us dissolved like fog. His forehead rested against mine, and for that fragile second, everything bloodlines, curses, destiny fell away. But it couldn't last. A sudden sound like claws scraping stone echoed from the cave's mouth. Lucas stiffened, pulling me behind him. His eyes flashed gold again. "They found us," he said, his tone calm but lethal. A growl rolled through the dark, followed by two glowing pairs of eyes. I gripped the book tighter. "What do we do?" "Stay behind me," he said, his voice low and steady. "No matter what happens, don't drop that book. It's the key to everything." Before I could reply, the first wolf lunged. Luca moved faster than sight, his body shifting mid-motion, claws slashing through air and bone. The sound was brutal, primal. The second wolf attacked from the side. But I reacted instinctively, raising my hand. A burst of light shot from my palm. The air shimmered. The creature froze mid-leap, suspended as if caught in invisible chains. My heart raced. I didn't know how I'd done it. But Luca saw. Even in the chaos, his gaze found mine, full of shock and awe. When it was over, the cave fell silent again. 2 wolves lay motionless, shadows dissolving from their bodies. I stood trembling, the glow fading from my hands. What was that? I whispered. He turned to me slowly. The beginning, he said. Your power's waking. I looked down at my shaking fingers. They still tingled, alive with something wild. Luca stepped closer again, his eyes softer now. If you stay with me, we'll both be hunted. But if we run together, we might have a chance. I met his gaze. Then we run. He hesitated, then extended his hand. One condition, he said quietly. No more lies. Not between us. I took his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin, the pulse beneath it. No more lies. I vowed. The storm outside howled again, echoing our promise through the mountains. For the first time since everything began, we weren't just 2 people bound by fate. We were allies bound by choice. And somewhere in the distance, under the darkened sky, I could almost feel destiny stirring, watching. Waiting. By the time the blood moon rose, I was no longer the same woman who'd once lived quietly in Ridge Hollow. That version of me, the one who feared the dark, who believed in reason and order, was gone. What stood in her place was someone who had seen what hid behind the veil of ordinary life. Someone who had touched power and paid for it with her peace. And yet, under the glow of that crimson moon, with Luca beside me, I had never felt more alive. For the past week, we'd hidden deep in the mountain pass training, healing, learning what the book had to teach. Every night, Luca tested my control. Every morning, I read the ancient words inked in silver across pages that seemed to breathe. I'd learned to summon light from my palms, to listen to the whispers in the wind that carried the voices of the wolves long dead. I could feel the pulse of the forest like a heartbeat beneath my skin. But power, I'd learned, comes with hunger. And hunger always calls something else in return. On the 7th night, the book changed. Its pages bled from silver to red. A symbol appeared, a circle of fangs beneath a single moon. The blood moon pact, Luca murmured, tracing the image. His touch trembled slightly, though he tried to hide it. It's real. I thought it was a myth. What does it mean? He looked at me then, his eyes reflecting the moonlight like molten metal. It means the Shadow Pack has made their move. The blood moon grants them the right to claim an alpha heir through death or submission. I swallowed hard. Claim me, you mean? His jaw tightened. They won't get the chance. I wanted to believe him, but deep down, I could feel it, the pull of something vast and inevitable. The prophecy written in the book wasn't just about wolves and bloodlines. It was about a war older than memory. A war one had somehow been born to end. And now, the enemy was coming. We first heard them before dawn, the eerie howls rippling across the valley. They weren't random. They were a call, precise and coordinated. They're circling, Luca said, his voice low. They've found us. Then we don't run, I said, closing the book. We end this. He turned to me, eyes dark and conflicted. You don't understand, Amara. That alpha Kale, he's not like the others. He's stronger, older. He carries the curse of the first pack. He'll try to turn you, bind you to him before the night ends. Then he'll fail, I said, though my voice shook, because I've already chosen who I stand with. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. No words. Just everything unsaid, the fear, the ache, the hope. Then Luca nodded once, sharp and certain. Then we fight. The hunt began before twilight. They came through the forest like ghost shadows moving on 4 legs, eyes burning silver and red. I could feel their hunger from miles away, like 1,000 heartbeats thudding in unison. Luca and I moved together, silent and swift. He led me through a narrow ridge that opened into a clearing, a wide circle of ancient stones etched with the same runes as the book. The moment I stepped into it, the air hummed. "This is where it ends," Luca said. I felt it too. Power thrummed beneath the ground, coiling like something alive. The stones began to glow faintly, reacting to the blood moon above Dot. And then Cale appeared. He emerged from the tree line, tall and broad, his presence radiating command. His hair was white as ash, his eyes red like fire. He didn't shift, he didn't need to. Power rippled off him in waves. "So," Cale said, his voice deep, ancient, "the lost Alpha's daughters lives." I wondered if the stories were true. I stood tall, though my knees trembled. "You shouldn't have come here." He smiled faintly. "Oh, little one, this place belongs to me. This night belongs to me." His gaze flicked toward Luca. "And you, traitor wolf, still trying to save what cannot be saved." Luca's growl rolled through the clearing, low and dangerous. "You'll have to kill me first." Cale tilted his head. That was always the plan. In the blink of an eye, everything exploded into motion. The pack charge, a blur of claws and teeth. Luca shifted mid-leap, silver fur catching the moonlight. I raised my hands, the runes of the stones igniting beneath my feet. Light burst from my palms, pure and blinding. Wolves screamed as it hit them, their forms dissolving into shadow. But Cale didn't move. He simply watched, waiting. When the last of his pack fell, he stepped forward. "Impressive," he said, almost admiringly. "Your blood remembers. But power without surrender is hollow. You can't deny what you are." He raised his hand. A wave of force slammed into me, throwing me back against the stones. Pain flared through my body. I tried to rise, but he was suddenly there faster than sight, his hand closing around my throat. "Your father thought he could hide you from me," Cale hissed. "He forgot what he took when he defied me." "My father," I choked out. "Who are you to him?" He smiled, and for the first time I saw something terrible behind his eyes. "His brother." The world tilted. The air seemed to vanish. "No." "Oh yes," Cale said, his voice soft as death. "The Alpha you call father stole everything from me. My pack, my power, my blood. But now, I'll take it back through you." A flash of silver interrupted him. Luca lunged, slamming into Cale with a force that shook the ground. They crashed into the stones, claws and fangs tearing through light and darkness. I forced myself up, blood in my mouth, power burning in my veins. "Amara," Luca shouted, pinned under Cale's weight. "The book, use it." I reached for it where it had fallen in the dirt. The pages had burst open, glowing red with the symbol of the moon. Words I didn't understand rose from it like smoke, swirling around me. I spoke them. The ground split. The stones blazed with crimson fire. Cale roared as the light consumed him, his form flickering between man and beast. For a moment, I thought it was over. But when the light faded, he was still standing burned, bleeding but alive. He smiled, slow and terrible. "You have your father's strength," he said, "but you don't have his will. That's why you'll lose." He vanished into shadow. The clearing fell silent except for the sound of my breathing and Luca's ragged gasps. He staggered toward me, his hand finding mine. "He's not done," he said. "The blood moon lasts 3 nights. He'll come again with everything he has." I nodded, feeling the pulse of the stones beneath my feet. the echo of the power still alive in my blood. Then I'll be ready. Luca looked at me, eyes soft with pride and pain. You're becoming what you were meant to be. I looked at the horizon, where the moon bled red over the mountains. My destiny wasn't waiting anymore. It was coming for me, and this time, I wouldn't run. The night was red. Not just the moon, everything. The sky, the mountains, the rivers that cut through the valley. It was as if the world itself had opened its veins. 3 nights of the blood moon. The final hour was upon us. I stood at the edge of the sacred ridge, the old book clutched in my hands. Its pages had stopped glowing hours ago, but I could still feel it pulsing faintly, like a second heartbeat. The air was heavy with the scent of rain, and iron. Luca stood behind me, silent. His arm was still bandaged from our last battle. His breathing uneven, but his eyes, those wolf-bright eyes, were steady. He'll come for you, he said quietly. You know that? I nodded. He'll come for the bloodline. He always has. Luca stepped closer, his voice softer now. If you fight him, he'll destroy what's left of you. You've already given everything. I turned to him then, meeting his gaze. Not everything. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. The world around us hummed with silence, waiting. Then, without a word, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small silver dagger, the same one he'd carried since the day I met him. Then take this, he said, offering it to me. It was your father's, forged from moonstone and blood. It's the only thing that can end him. The dagger felt alive in my hand, its edge whispering faintly against the air. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of what it meant. Luca, I whispered. If I don't make it, he stopped me, pressing a finger to my lips. You will, because I'll fight with you, till the end. The wind shifted, the forest stilled, and then the shadows moved. Cale stepped out from the darkness, alone this time. His clothes were torn, his pale skin streaked with scars that hadn't fully healed. Yet his presence filled the clearing like smoke-thick, suffocating, ancient. Still running toward death, little wolf? He said, his voice low and cruelly calm. I'm not running, I said. I'm finishing what you started. Cale smiled faintly. You sound just like your father before I broke him. I didn't let the words land. I raised the dagger and stepped forward. You broke nothing. He died protecting me. And now, I'll finish his fight. The ground beneath us trembled. Runes flared red around the stones, forming the ancient circle once again. The book in my hand snapped open, pages turning as if caught in a storm. Light erupted between us, splitting the clearing in half. Cale's eyes blazed crimson. Then let the bloodline decide. He moved faster than thought, faster than pain. His claws slashed through air and light, striking sparks against the dagger. Each hit sent a shock through my body. I stumbled, but didn't fall. Luca leapt in, his wolf form a blur of silver fury. He slammed into Cale, biting deep into his shoulder. Cale roared and threw him aside like a ragdoll. Luca crashed into the stones, unmoving. Luca! I screamed. Cale turned toward me, his grin sharp as knives. Do you see now? Love makes you weak. No, I said, my voice trembling but clear. It makes me human. And then, something inside me broke and became whole. The light around me deepened from silver to gold. The runes beneath my feet burned brighter than the moon. I could feel the energy rushing through my veins, raw and unstoppable. I wasn't just a daughter of wolves. I was the bridge between their world and ours. Cale hesitated, just for a moment. And in that breath, I moved. I drove the dagger into his chest. The sound that followed wasn't a scream. It was a howl, ancient and endless, echoing through every tree and stone. Cale's eyes widened in shock, his hands clutching mine. "You think this ends me?" he whispered. "I am the blood. I am the curse." Then the light swallowed him whole. The ground split, the wind roared, and the red sky seemed to collapse inward. For a moment I saw everything the wolves before time, the first moon, the moment when blood became bond. And then, silence. When I opened my eyes, Cale was gone. The stones were cold. The dagger had turned to Ashdot and Luca. He lay still at the edge of the circle. I crawled to him, my hands shaking. "Luca, please, no." His eyes fluttered open, weak but alive. "You did it," he whispered. "You ended it." Tears blurred my vision. "We did it. Together." He smiled faintly. "Then let that be enough." I held him as the first light of dawn broke over the ridge. The blood moon faded, taking its red glow with it. For the first time in what felt like forever, the world was quiet. And then, as the sun rose, the last page of the book turned on its own. Words appeared, glowing faintly in silver script. "The blood has been cleansed. The line restored. But every ending is only a beginning." The wind carried those words away, scattering them into the forest like ashes. I looked down at Luca, his breathing shallow but steady. The curse was broken, but at a cost. The power that had filled me was fading, leaving me human once more. I didn't know if that was victory or punishment. But as I watched the dawn spill across the mountains, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. Luca stirred beside me. "Amara," he murmured. "What now?" I looked toward the horizon, where the sun rose over the ashes of our past. "Now," I said quietly, "we begin again." Dawn came quietly. No thunder, no magic tearing through the sky, just the soft hum of wind brushing over the ridge, as if the earth itself was finally exhaling after centuries of holding its breath. The blood moon was gone. Its crimson shadow had lifted, leaving behind a pale, trembling light that painted the mountains silver. For the first time, I could smell life again: wet earth, pine, and the faint sweetness of new growth. I sat beside Luca as he slept, his head resting on my lap. His face, once sharp and fierce, now looked almost human, peaceful, fragile, real. I had washed away the blood from his hands hours ago, though some stains had settled too deep to fade. He stirred when the first ray of sunlight touched his skin. A faint groan escaped him, followed by a whisper, "Still here." A small, tired laugh left me. "You think I'd leave now?" His eyes opened, a pale reflection of dawn. For a long moment, he just looked at me, as if trying to memorize what the world looked like in peace. "The curse is broken," he murmured. "You did what even your father couldn't." I shook my head. "We did it." He smiled faintly, the kind that always made my heart ache. "You sound just like him." The wind shifted, carrying with it the scent of ash and rain. I glanced toward the circle of stones, the place where Cale had fallen. Nothing remained of him now. No body, no trace, not even a scar in the soil. But the silence he left behind felt heavier than his presence ever did. "Do you think it's really over?" I asked softly. Luca didn't answer right away. He reached for my hand, his fingers trembling but warm. "Evil never disappears, Amara. It sleeps. But as long as we're here, we'll keep it from waking." I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe in tomorrow, but something inside me still felt hollow. The power that had burned in my blood was gone, leaving only echoes, memories of light, of fire, of being more than human. I had given it all up to seal the curse. And now, for the first time, I felt the full weight of mortality. By midday, the valley had begun to stir again. The wolves, those who had fled when the blood moon rose, were returning from the forests. I could hear their howls in the distance, cautious at first, then growing bolder. Luca and I walked down to the river. It had run red 3 nights ago. Now it flowed clear and cold. The reflection of the sun shimmered on its surface like liquid gold. Your pack will need you, I said quietly. They'll need a leader. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. And you? I hesitated. I don't know who I am now. Not fully. Not after everything. He studied me for a long time, then said, You're the one who ended an ancient curse. The daughter of 2 worlds. That doesn't make you lost. Amara, it makes you free. Free. The word stung more than it soothed, because freedom came with its own kind of loneliness. I turned my gaze toward the mountains. Somewhere out there, my father's spirit slept, no longer bound by pain, no longer forced to wander between realms. I hoped he saw me now. I hoped he was proud. Luca stepped closer. Whatever you choose, I'll find you, he said. Even if it takes 1,000 moons. His voice was steady, but there was something final in it. A quiet understanding that our paths, for now, might not run side by side. I reached up and touched his cheek, feeling the warmth of him against the cool mountain air. You already found me, I whispered. That's enough. For a moment time folded. The air between us shimmered with the weight of everything unsaid. Every night spent running. Every fight survived. Every heartbeat stolen from the edge of death. Then, slowly we leaned in, foreheads touching, breaths mingling. Not a promise. Not a goodbye. Just a moment suspended between the two. Days passed. Then weeks. The valley healed faster than I did. The trees grew back. The wolves reclaimed the hills. Villagers returned, unaware of how close the world had come to unraveling. And I found myself drawn to the old cabin by the edge of the forest, where I had once lived before the storms began. It stood silent now, half swallowed by ivy and time. But when I stepped inside, it felt like stepping into a memory. The cradle still stood by the window, empty but not forgotten. I ran my fingers over its wooden edge, tracing the carvings my father had made years ago, symbols of protection, of love, of lineage. I closed my eyes. He's safe now, I whispered to the ghost of who I had been. The child, the world, all of it. A breeze slipped through the cracked window, carrying a sound so soft I almost missed it, a faint howl. Distant but unmistakable. Luca. I smiled through my tears. He hadn't forgotten. Neither had I. That night I dreamed of the ridge. But this time, it wasn't burning. The stones were cool beneath my feet. The sky vast and endless. In the distance I saw figures, wolves and humans, side by side, their forms shimmering like moonlight on water. And among them, 2 shadows stood close together. One tall and broad, one smaller, with long hair that caught the wind. They turned toward me, smiled. Then faded. When I woke, dawn was breaking again. The world outside the window was silver and soft, alive with birdsong and mist. I stood there for a long time, watching the light touch the trees, feeling my heartbeat slow to match the rhythm of the forest. The curse had taken much from me. Blood, innocence, power. But it had also given me something deeper. A truth. That love, real love, doesn't end in blood or destiny. It endures and echoes in memories, in the spaces between what was lost and what still remains. And as the first light of morning warmed my skin, I whispered to the wind, to the ghosts, to him until the next moon. The forest answered with a soft, distant howl. Not goodbye. Just a reminder that some bonds are eternal. Even my husband's absence was starting to feel like a weight pressing down on me. Not just the empty space in the house, but the realization that everyone I had trusted to guide me, to protect me, had turned away. And yet, through the fear, a part of me ached for something else, something I couldn't name. I wanted to see him again, the figure from my dreams. Even if it meant stepping into the unknown. It wasn't just the house that felt fragile. Every part of my life seemed to teeter on the edge. Simple tasks, making breakfast, folding laundry, even walking to the mailbox felt perilous, as though invisible eyes followed my every move. The baby sensed it too. She would stiffen, her wide eyes fixed on corners of the room where nothing was, letting out a soft, warning whimper. When I looked around, there was nothing. But then there was always the faintest trace of movement, shadows shifting against the wall. The faint scent of smoke and earth, the echo of whispered syllables. I started keeping a journal, writing down every unusual occurrence in desperate hope that documenting it would make it real or unreal. I wasn't sure which. Every entry ended with the same conclusion. I was not alone. Something or someone was here, watching, waiting, and I couldn't help but feel it was only a matter of time before it revealed itself completely. The first day passed. Then the second, and the unease only deepened. It was in the way the wind rattled the windows, in the way the floorboards groaned under invisible weight, in the way the baby would shiver for no reason and stare into corners I couldn't see. Every sensation was amplified, every shadow a potential threat. I was walking through life with one eye open, waiting for something I didn't understand but instinctively feared. That evening, I stepped outside to clear my mind. The moon hung low and swollen, casting pale silver light across the yard. Trees swayed, their branches scratching at the wind, and I felt the familiar pull of something watching from the darkness beyond. I froze, clutching the baby close, her warmth a fragile shield against the icy chill creeping up my spine. A movement caught my eye, a flicker among the trees. My pulse spiked, my breath shallow. I wanted to run, to retreat into the safety of my home, but my legs refused. Something drew me forward, an invisible thread connecting me to the shadows. I squinted, straining to see, and for a moment, I thought I glimpsed him. The figure from my dreams, taller than any human, his eyes glowing faintly, observing from the edge of the forest. Then he was gone. I staggered back inside, heart pounding, baby clutched to my chest. My hands trembled as I locked the doors and checked the windows. The whispers returned, softer now, almost soothing, as if mocking my fear. "You have been chosen," they seemed to say. "Prepare yourself." And for the first time, I realized the truth I had been avoiding. My ordinary life was gone. The quiet, predictable existence I had clung to was over. Something beyond comprehension had entered my world. Something powerful, something ancient, and it had marked me as I laid the baby in her crib and sat by her side. I knew I wasn't ready. I didn't know what was coming, who or what was out there, or what it wanted from me. But the ripple of unease had grown into a tide, and I sensed that the moment of reckoning was approaching faster than I could imagine. And in that heavy silence, I felt it again, the pull of destiny, faint but undeniable, tugging at my soul, whispering that nothing would ever be the same. Something was coming, something inevitable, and I was helpless to stop it. I had convinced myself that the previous night had been a fluke, a storm, shadows, my imagination running wild. But as the days passed, it became clear that the world around me had shifted, and I was no longer the center of a normal, predictable life. It started with the animals. I had never thought much about the birds and squirrels that visited the yard, but now they seemed to watch me with purpose, their eyes unervingly human, their movements almost deliberate. One morning, as I carried the baby outside, a black crow landed on the fence, tilting its head, regarding me in silence. Its beady eyes reflected a knowing intelligence that made my skin prickle. The crow cawed once, a sharp, discordant sound that seemed to echo longer than it should have, then took flight. A chill ran down my spine. It was the first of many signs that I was not alone in ways I could understand. Something or someone was trying to reach me. Later that day, while running errands, I noticed a strange piece of paper pinned to the community bulletin board outside the grocery store. I approached cautiously, my instincts prickling. The paper was blank, save for a single symbol scrawled in ink. A circle with intricate, intertwining lines inside it, almost like a knot, and the small triangle pointing downward at its base. I shivered. I didn't recognize the symbol, but it carried a weight. A silent warning I couldn't ignore. As I stared at it, an elderly woman shuffled past. Her head turned slightly, as if she were looking for someone or something. Her voice was a rasping whisper, but I heard it clearly. "Be careful. The mark chooses, but it does not warn twice." I froze, gripping the baby closer. The woman didn't stop to explain or clarify. She shuffled away, disappearing into the crowd. But the words lodged in my mind, twisting fear and curiosity into something that refused to settle. The mark chooses? What mark? And what did she mean by warning twice? Back at home, I tried to shake it off, but the house no longer felt safe. I kept catching glimpses of movement in the corners of my eyes. Shadows, stretching and retreating, just beyond the reach of the light. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind against the windows, made my heart lurch. It was as if the house itself had become alive, conspiring to remind me that I had been noticed. Then came the first night of real terror. I was rocking the baby to sleep when I noticed the symbols. Not on paper this time, but carved faintly into the wooden floor near her crib. Tiny, intricate patterns that hadn't been there before. I ran my fingers over them, tracing the lines, but the deeper I looked, the more they seemed to shift, twisting under my touch. I felt a presence behind me, a pressure in the air, and I spun around. The room was empty. And yet I knew I was being observed. A sound at the window made me jump. A large owl, feathers glinting silver in the moonlight, perched just outside. Its gaze was unnervingly sharp, and it stayed fixed on me for what felt like an eternity. Then, as silently as it had appeared, it spread its wings and disappeared into the night. I hugged the baby to me, whispering promises I barely believed. The next morning I went to the town library to distract myself, to seek normalcy in the rows of books and dusty shelves. But even there, I couldn't escape the feeling of eyes on me. While scanning the reference section, I noticed a man in a dark coat, leaning against a shelf at the edge of the room. He didn't approach, didn't speak, but his presence was undeniable. I caught a glimpse of his eyes, amber, glowing faintly as if lit from within, and my breath caught in my throat. Before I could gather my courage to confront him, he slipped out the door, leaving behind only a faint scent, earthy, smoky, powerful. My mind reeled. Who was he? Why did he watch me? And why did I feel that familiar pull? The same that I had felt in my dreams. Returning home, I found the symbols had multiplied. Now there were tiny carvings along the hallway, etched into door frames and even the base of the stairs. I ran my fingers over one, and a shiver ran through me, a signal I couldn't name. It was as if the carvings were alive, reacting to my touch, speaking a language I didn't yet understand. The whispers returned that night, louder and more insistent. They weren't just vague murmurs anymore. Words formed, phrases I could almost comprehend. Prepare. Chosen. Guardian. Danger. My chest tightened with fear and anticipation. I felt as though the world I had known ordinary, safe, predictable had ended, and I was now walking the edges of something larger, something ancient and relentless. Even the baby sensed it. She whimpered softly, reaching toward the shadows, her small fingers curling around nothing. I whispered to her, soothing her, but I felt the truth settling in my bones. We were being marked, watched, and prepared for something we could not yet name. That night, sleep came in fits. Every time my eyes closed, I saw the forest from my dreams, the silver light, the whispering trees, the figure waiting at the edge of the shadows. I woke again and again, the baby in my arms, my heart pounding, the feeling of being watched crawling beneath my skin. By morning, I felt hollowed out, exhausted but also drawn, pulled forward by a thread I couldn't resist. Every shadow, every whisper, every symbol was a signal. Something was coming, and I was at the center of it. The ordinary world I had clung to was gone, and every heartbeat reminded me that my life was about to change. And yet, even as fear coiled tight around me, there was a spark of curiosity, a longing for what lay ahead. The whispers promised danger, yes, but also revelation. And deep down, I knew that the figure I had glimpsed, the alpha from my dreams, was no ordinary man. He was a key, and somehow, I was the lock. The day ended with the first true sense of unease, the kind that burrows deep into your soul and refuses to let go. I sat by the baby's crib, tracing her tiny fingers, my thoughts racing. Every symbol, every whisper, every strange encounter had a purpose I couldn't yet grasp. And I just knew that it was all leading to something unavoidable. Something was coming, and I was running out of time to prepare. The house felt different that evening, charged with a tension I couldn't ignore. The shadows had deepened into shapes I could almost name, and the whispers, soft, insistent, coaxing, had returned with purpose. I wasn't imagining it anymore. Something was here, watching, waiting. I was carrying the baby to the window, hoping the evening sun might cast some ordinary glow into our little world, when I noticed it a flicker in the corner of my eye. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light. But then I saw him, only for a moment. A shadow, taller than any human, moving along the tree line outside the yard. He didn't approach, didn't call out, but my chest tightened as if something inside me recognized him before my mind could process who he was. My fingers clenched around the window frame, knuckles white. The baby stirred, sensing the tension, and I whispered softly, rocking her in my arms. He vanished as quickly as he appeared, a mere shadow against the thickening dusk, yet his presence lingered in the air like a pulse, a magnetic hum that resonated through the floorboards beneath my feet. I could feel it in my bones, in the slow, persistent drum of my heartbeat. I told myself it was impossible. A neighbor? A passerby? But logic offered no comfort. His movement had been too deliberate, too controlled, and his aura, whatever it was, had brushed against me, leaving a warmth I couldn't name. The next few hours were unbearable. I paced the house, carrying the baby, trying to convince myself that what I saw was nothing more than a trick of the failing light. Yet, every creak of the floor, every rustle from the yard, seemed to echo with intention. Something or someone was testing me, probing me, watching my reactions with silent amusement or perhaps caution. By nightfall, the whispers returned in earnest. They weren't voices I could understand fully, but the meaning was clear. He was near, and he was waiting for something from me. My chest tightened with a strange combination of fear and anticipation. I wasn't just being watched. I was being drawn, and the pull was irresistible. Unable to remain inside any longer, I stepped out onto the porch. The night air was cool, damp with the faint scent of rain that had passed hours before. Trees swayed gently, and the shadows stretched long across the yard, curling and folding in ways that made my skin prickle. I held the baby close, whispering reassurances. though my own voice trembled. Then I saw him again. A fleeting silhouette beyond the trees, just at the edge of visibility, and for a brief instant, our eyes, or what I imagined were his eyes, met. It was impossible to describe the sensation. Magnetic, unnerving, as if some invisible tether had linked my heartbeat to his, a pull that refused to be denied. My chest ached, my mind buzzed, and a shiver traveled down my spine. He didn't move closer, and yet I felt him nearer than ever. The air seemed to pulse around me, charged with his presence. I wanted to speak, to call out, but no words came. My body had frozen in equal parts fear and fascination. Even the baby seemed to sense it. Her small fingers tightened around mine, her eyes wide and fixed in the same direction. I had been staring, and then he was gone. The night returned to its ordinary sounds, rustling leaves, distant cars, the faint hum of life beyond the trees. But I knew it wasn't ordinary anymore. The encounter had left an impression on me I could neither understand nor ignore. Something about him, whoever he was, had brushed against the edges of my soul, stirring a longing I didn't even know existed. I went inside, locking the doors and windows, yet the sensation remained. Every shadow seemed alive, every whisper hovering just beyond the reach of understanding. I moved through the house as though I were treading water, the baby's warmth my only anchor to reality. Yet even in the safety of the walls, the pull of the night, the pull of him, lingered. Sleep came reluctantly, haunted by fragments of movement, of glowing eyes in the distance, of a shadow that was both terrifying and mesmerizing. In my dreams he appeared again, not fully, only glimpses. A hand reaching through the silvered mist of the forest, a tall figure stepping silently across moonlit ground, eyes that glimmered with fire, and a presence that pressed against the walls of my mind with gentle insistence. I woke in the early hours. The baby curled against me, sensing my unease. I whispered to her, trying to ground myself. The house was quiet, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Something had entered my life, and it had made itself impossible to ignore. By morning, the pull hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown stronger. Every shadow, every flicker of movement outside the window seemed to pulse with intention. And I knew, with a certainty that was both thrilling and terrifying, that he would appear again. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what he wanted. But I knew one thing. I would recognize him again, and when I did, nothing in my life would ever be the same. The unease had grown into a quiet obsession. I found myself scanning every corner of the yard, every shadow in the house, for even the faintest sign of him. Each flicker of light, each whisper of movement, made my pulse race. The baby sensed it too, her small body stiffening as though she understood more than I did. And then I realized something that both terrified and exhilarated me. I wanted to see him again, even if it meant stepping into the unknown. The first glimpse had been brief, too fleeting, but the impression it left was permanent. His presence, shadowy, magnetic, unnerving, had carved itself into my thoughts. A silent promise of something dangerous, something forbidden, something I could not yet comprehend. As I sat by the window that morning, staring out at the trees where he had appeared, I felt a pull in my chest I couldn't ignore. Curiosity, fear, fascination all tangled together, weaving a thread I knew I would follow. And somewhere deep inside, I sensed that the moment he revealed himself fully, my life would change forever. For now, all I had was a glimpse, a shadow, and a feeling that I was already marked. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The pull that had been whispering at the edges of my mind, tugging me toward the shadows, had grown impossible to resist. Every creak of the floor, Every flicker of movement outside the window, every whisper in the dark seemed to insist I step closer to him. And tonight I would. The forest behind our home stretched dark and silent under the pale moonlight. Mist curled among the trees like fingers reaching out, soft and unsettling. I wrapped the baby securely in my arms, a fragile shield of warmth, and stepped onto the narrow path that led to the edge of the woods. The air was cool and damp, carrying the scent of earth, rain, and something far older. Something alive. I didn't know what I expected, fear, perhaps, or relief, but the instant I crossed into the shadows, I felt his presence. Not behind me, not beside me, but around me, as if the darkness itself were alive and pulsing with him. My heartbeat surged, rapid and uneven, but it wasn't just fear. Something else coursed through me, a magnetic, undeniable pull that made every nerve tingle. And then I saw him. He stepped from the shadows as if he had always been there. Every movement smooth, deliberate, commanding, taller than any man I had ever seen. His silhouette powerful and perfect, and yet something in the way he moved was otherworldly. Eyes like molten amber caught the moonlight, piercing, intense, and when they landed on me, the air seemed to hum with a force I couldn't name. "You came," he said, his voice low, rough around the edges, yet layered with a strange warmth that made my chest tighten. I had to," I stammered, clutching the baby closer. I felt, I don't know, something, pulling me here. His gaze didn't waver. "That is no coincidence," he said. A faint smile brushed his lips, almost predatory in its subtlety. "You have been chosen, whether you understand it or not." I wanted to step back, but my feet felt rooted to the ground. My pulse raced, a dangerous rhythm that matched the tension in the air. His presence was intoxicating, dangerous, irresistible. Every instinct screamed at me to be wary, yet every part of me wanted to move closer, to see, to touch, to understand. "You're different," I managed to whisper. "I don't even know who you are." He tilted his head slightly, studying me as if peeling back layers of my soul. "I am what you have dreamed of," he said, cryptically. "And yet, more than you could have imagined." The baby stirred, and he glanced down, his eyes softening ever so slightly. "She feels it too," he murmured, almost to himself. "The connection, stronger than blood, older than time. I felt it too, the pull, the current that ran between us. I didn't understand it, couldn't name it, but it vibrated through my chest, my hands, my very bones. Every step he took closer made my heart thrum like a drum, a mixture of fear, awe, and something I wasn't supposed to feel. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What do you want from us?" "To protect," he said simply, "and to guide." But there was something else in his voice, something deeper and unspoken. Desire? Command? Warning? My chest constricted at the realization that I was not just drawn to him. I was pulled, magnetically, in a way I had never experienced. It was dangerous, forbidden, and yet it made my stomach twist with something dangerously close to longing. He stepped closer, and the shadows seemed to bend toward him. I could see the fine details now, the sharp lines of his jaw, the intensity of his eyes, the subtle tension in his shoulders. Power radiated from him in waves, undeniable and almost overwhelming. Every instinct screamed caution, yet every part of me ached to reach out, to feel, to know. "You are afraid," he said softly, as if reading my thoughts. "And yet you come willingly. That is rare. I don't know why," I admitted. My voice was barely more than a whisper, but I felt the truth in it. There's something about you. Something I can't resist. He smiled faintly, and it was as dangerous as it was alluring. Good, he said, because resisting will not be an option. The baby yawned, stretching tiny arms, and I realized she had been quiet for the entire encounter. His gaze softened further, lingering on her with something almost paternal. And yet, when he looked back at me, the intensity returned, hotter, sharper, almost unbearable. I wanted to step back, but I couldn't. I wanted to run, but my feet refused. I wanted to scream, to deny the magnetic pull tugging at my soul, but it was impossible. The force between us was undeniable, unrelenting, a silent command I was powerless to resist. Minutes or hours, it was impossible to tell passed in a tense silence. Each of us studying the other, feeling the undercurrent of something forbidden, dangerous, yet impossibly enticing. His presence was overwhelming, yet protective, terrifying, yet exhilarating. Finally, he spoke again. His voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through my very core. You do not yet understand the path you are on, he said. But you will. And when you do, you will have no choice but to embrace it. I shivered, not from cold, but from the truth in his words. The pull was real. The connection was undeniable. And somewhere deep down, a part of me longed to see where it would lead, even if it was forbidden, even if it was dangerous. And then, as silently as he had appeared, he stepped back into the shadows. The moonlight dimmed his outline, leaving only the faintest trace of his presence in the air. My legs trembled beneath me. My chest ached. My mind raced with questions I couldn't yet answer. The baby slept peacefully, unaware of the electricity that had filled the night. I stood frozen, clutching her to my chest, my heart hammering in my ears. The encounter had been brief, fleeting, yet the mark it left on me was permanent. I could feel it in my bones, in my pulse, in the air that still seemed charged around me. I was drawn in, deeply, dangerously, and I had no idea how far the pull would take me. As I made my way back home, the shadows seemed to cling closer, the whispers softer now, like a promise or a warning I could not yet comprehend. I was shaken, unsettled, and yet curiously, impossibly excited. He was out there, watching, waiting, and somehow, I already knew that meeting him was only the beginning. Something inside me had been awakened that night, a force I could not name, a longing I could not deny. And for the first time, I understood that my life had changed forever. I was no longer just a mother trying to protect her child. I was a woman caught in the pull of something ancient, powerful, and irresistible. I was terrified, but I wanted more. The next few days blurred together, a strange haze of normalcy and impossible coincidences that left me questioning my own mind. Every mundane task, the grocery run, folding laundry, rocking the baby to sleep, suddenly felt fragile, as if the ordinary world I clung to was cracking at the edges. It began with small things. Shadows that lingered too long, rustling sounds in empty rooms, and lights flickering when no storm passed. I found tiny claw marks on the wooden floor, faint and almost delicate, near the baby's crib. I had checked it a dozen times before. They weren't there. My pulse raced, but the marks weren't aggressive. They seemed deliberate, like warnings or signals left for me to see. Then there were the dreams. Every night the forest returned. The silver light, the whispering trees, the figure of him, the alpha I could no longer stop thinking about, stepped closer each time. Sometimes he didn't speak, only watched me as I wandered the moonlit paths, the air around him charged with power. I couldn't touch but could feel in every fiber of my being. Other nights, I heard voices soft, urgent, warning me, guiding me, urging me to prepare. That it wasn't just dreams anymore. Small, impossible coincidences started bleeding into my waking life. A black crow perched outside my window the moment I opened my eyes. Its eyes seemed too intelligent, too knowing, and it didn't fly away even when I approached. A wolf's howl echoed in the distance, long and mournful, though there were no wolves in the area. Even the wind felt deliberate, brushing against my skin with intention, guiding me in ways I didn't understand. One afternoon, I went into town to run errands. At the local cafe, the elderly woman from before the one who whispered warnings was sitting alone. She caught my gaze and tilted her head slightly, her eyes sharp and knowing. "You are in the path now," she said, her voice low and trembling with age and authority. "The path chooses the willing and the unwilling. It devours." I froze, a shiver running down my spine. "I don't understand," I whispered. "You will," she replied. "Soon enough." Then, as abruptly as she had spoken, she stood, leaving only a faint scent of earth and smoke behind her. I watched her shuffle out of the cafe, my mind spinning. She wasn't ordinary, that much I knew. And neither was he. The days wore on, each one a delicate dance between the mundane and the impossible. I tried to maintain a sense of normalcy for the baby, feeding her, bathing her, singing her lullabies, but it became increasingly difficult. The pull from him, from the shadows, from something I couldn't name, grew stronger with every heartbeat. One evening, the first real danger struck. I was walking home through the quiet streets, the baby in her carrier, when I noticed movement in the alleyway beside my house. At first, I thought it was a stray cat or a trick of the streetlights, but then the shadow twisted unnaturally, stretching and contracting as if alive. My stomach dropped and I quickened my pace, clutching the baby tighter. A figure emerged, a man, but not him. Taller, broader, with eyes dark and hollow, and a presence that made the hair on my arms stand on end. I froze, unable to move as he stepped closer, his intentions clear in the way the shadows clung to him. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice low and threatening. I live here," I stammered, panic rising. The baby whimpered in response to my fear, her small voice cutting through the tension. The figure tilted his head, watching her with something I didn't recognize. And then, just as suddenly as he appeared, he vanished into the darkness. My heart pounded in my chest, and I realized there were forces here that weren't just observing. They were testing me. That night, sleep was impossible. I lay awake, the baby tucked against my chest, feeling the shadows move along the walls of the room. Every creak of the floor, every whisper of the wind felt like a warning, a prelude to something larger. My dreams were violent with light and shadow, the forest ablaze with silver fire, and always him watching, waiting, guiding me. By the next morning, I was exhausted, hollowed out by fear and anticipation. The boundaries between ordinary life and the supernatural had blurred completely. I could no longer pretend that my world was normal. The collision was inevitable. It came to a head that afternoon. I was in the backyard, letting the baby crawl on a blanket in the sun, when I noticed the symbols again etched faintly into the bark of the trees. Perfectly formed, glowing faintly in a way that made my stomach twist. I had seen these symbols in my dreams, in the carvings at home, and now they were here, alive in the world around me. A low growl reached my ears, soft at first, then growing in volume and intensity. My heart leapt into my throat. The shadows in the yard thickened, curling around the edges like living tendrils. And I saw movement, a pair of glowing amber eyes reflected in the shaded corner near the trees. And then I heard his voice. "Stay back. he commanded, but there was no anger in it. Only caution, power, and an intensity that made my skin prickle. I froze, clutching the baby closer. The growl intensified, coming from the shadows beyond him. My mind raced. Danger was real, immediate, and yet, the pull, the connection, was irresistible. Even with fear thrumming in my veins, I wanted him closer, wanted to understand, wanted to step into the impossible. A figure stepped from the shadows, a wolf-like creature, massive, predatory, but intelligent in its gaze. It snarled low, circling, testing, challenging. I felt the danger acutely. My heart hammered in my chest as instinct screamed at me to protect the baby, to run, to do anything, but I couldn't move. I was rooted, half by fear, half by the magnetic presence of him. He stepped forward, and the creature froze. His voice, low and commanding, carried across the yard. Back, now. The wolf hesitated, growled one last time, then slunk into the shadows, leaving only the rustle of leaves in its wake. I sank to my knees, clutching the baby, my body trembling. My pulse raced, my chest ached, and yet, even in the terror, I couldn't deny the draw, the pull, the dangerous fascination that clung to him. He was not just my protector. He was my magnet, my challenge, and perhaps the first glimpse of something I wasn't ready to name. As he stepped closer, the shadows around him seemed to bend, responding to his presence. The pull between us was undeniable, an invisible tether coiling around my chest. I wanted to step back, but I couldn't, even with danger so close, even with the world shifting around me in ways I didn't understand. I wanted him. And I knew, with a certainty that terrified me, that the collision of our worlds had only just begun. Because in the shadows, in the symbols, in the creatures of the night, something was stirring, a force far older, far stronger than I had imagined. And it was coming for us. The days after the encounter with the creature, in the yard, blurred into a strange rhythm. Fear and fascination intertwined, leaving me constantly on edge, yet strangely alive. I could no longer deny that he had become a force in my life, magnetic, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. He appeared first as a shadow, a movement at the edge of my vision, always keeping his distance, observing me. But then, slowly, cautiously, he began to step closer. His presence was no longer a fleeting glimpse. It was intentional. And I realized, with a mixture of fear and anticipation, that he wanted me to see him, truly see him. One evening, after the baby had fallen asleep, I found him waiting at the edge of the forest. The moonlight spilled over the yard, casting silver across the grass, and there he stood, tall, commanding, and impossibly beautiful. His eyes glimmered like molten amber, and for the first time, he allowed himself to speak without the barrier of shadows between us. "You survived the night," he said, voice low but warm. I was concerned. I started, but the words faltered. I didn't know what to expect. My pulse raced. I still don't. He smiled faintly, a subtle curve of lips that made my heart skip. Most wouldn't. Most would have run or hidden. But you face it. His gaze didn't waver, steady and unyielding. Yet there was an undercurrent of something softer, something intimate that made the air between us electric. "Why me?" I asked, the question barely audible. "Why now? Why?" "Any of this?" He stepped a little closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him, yet not so close as to overstep some unspoken boundary. "Because you were chosen," he said. "But also, because you are ready, whether you know it or not." I shivered at the weight in his words, the authority in his presence. And yet there was a strange gentleness, a deliberate care in the way he observed me. He had stepped into my world and somehow I had let him. Over the next days, our encounters became frequent. Not all of them were in the shadows. Sometimes he would appear at a distance, watching over the baby as she played, ensuring she was safe, always invisible to the world but palpable to me. He began to speak in ways that felt natural, guiding me, sharing fragments of his world. "You cannot fear it," he said one evening, sitting at the edge of the yard, just out of reach. "This world, mine, yours, the spaces in between, they are not simple, but they are part of you now, part of all of us. What are you?" I asked, daring to meet his eyes fully for the first time. "I mean, really, not just what I see, but more than what you imagine," he interrupted softly, his voice like velvet and steel intertwined. "I have lived through centuries of rules, of battles, of survival. What you see is only a fragment." I wanted to step closer, to bridge the space between us, but instinct and caution restrained me. And yet, the magnetic pull between us was undeniable, pulling at my chest, my pulse, my very soul. Every word he spoke, every glance he allowed me to meet, made me ache in ways I didn't understand. We began to share small secrets. I told him about the baby, my fears, my sense of loss and rejection from the world I once knew. And in return, he shared glimpses of his past, not the full story. Not yet, but enough to hint at pain, responsibility, and an existence far beyond ordinary life. "You trust easily," he said once, watching me frown as I tried to grasp some invisible truth. "That you are cautious with your heart. That will serve you well. And yet, it will not protect you from me." I laughed softly, a nervous sound, and felt the pull of his presence even stronger. "You sound like a warning," I said, heart pounding. "Perhaps," he admitted, "but perhaps also a promise." The attraction between us was subtle at first gestures, lingering looks, the brush of a hand as he helped steady me over uneven ground. But each small connection carried a current too potent to ignore. My body recognized his presence in ways my mind struggled to understand. Forbiddance, yes, but impossible to resist. One night, the pull became overwhelming. I had followed him into the forest, unable to stay in the house any longer, drawn by a force I could not name. The mist hung low between the trees, curling around our feet, and for the first time, I saw him fully, not as a shadow, not as a flicker at the edge of my vision, but in the light of the moon. His features were sharper than I had imagined, the angles of his face chiseled, the strength in his shoulders undeniable. And then I saw at the hint of his true self. His eyes glowed brighter, not just amber but molten gold, reflecting an ancient power that made my breath catch. His pupils elongated slightly, and the faintest outline of fangs glimmered as he smiled, not threateningly, but as though revealing a piece of a puzzle I hadn't yet known existed. I staggered back, clutching the baby instinctively, though she was asleep and unaware. What are you?" I whispered, my voice trembling. He stepped closer, the shadows bending with him, his presence overwhelming and magnetic. "What I am is what you feared and desired all at once," he said softly. "I am both protector and predator, guide and force. And yet, all I want is to keep you safe." My heart raced uncontrollably. The attraction, the fear, the fascination all collided inside me, leaving me dizzy, vulnerable, and more drawn to him than ever. I could see now that the danger and the desire were intertwined. To know him was to risk everything, and yet the thought of stepping away felt impossible. "I don't understand it," I admitted, my voice barely audible. "Why I feel Why you? He shook his head, almost sadly. You don't need to understand yet. Only to feel. And you do. A silence fell between us, heavy with unspoken truths. I felt the pull of his presence like a tide, drawing me closer, bending my instincts and my heart in ways I had never imagined. And then, just as quickly as he had revealed a fragment of his true self, he stepped back into the shadows, leaving me trembling, clutching the baby, my mind racing with questions, fear, and a forbidden longing that refused to be denied. I was shaken, deeply, terrified and exhilarated all at once. And yet, one truth had become undeniable. The bond between us had grown, silent and magnetic, weaving threads that could not be broken. And the glimpse of his true self, the ancient, powerful, dangerous being he was, had left me breathless, aware that our connection was far more profound, far more perilous, and far more forbidden than I had ever imagined. The days that followed the night, I glimpsed his true form were a blur of emotions I couldn't name. Fear, fascination, longing, and an undeniable pull that made my chest ache, intertwined in a knot I could not unravel. Every moment without him felt hollow, yet every moment with him carried a tension I could barely bear. He no longer lingered in the shadows alone. Sometimes I would see him at a distance, standing perfectly still at the edge of the yard, watching me, his amber eyes gleaming like molten gold in the moonlight. The pull between us was stronger than ever, magnetic and unrelenting, yet I could feel cracks forming in the invisible thread that bound us. It began with small, almost imperceptible signs. One evening, while the baby slept, I heard him in the yard, speaking softly to something unseen. His words were melodic but strange, in a language I could not understand, and the shadows around him seemed to curl and sway, responding as though they had a life of their own. My breath caught, and I pressed myself against the wall, unsure whether to step closer or run. Then came the scratches. Not on the floor, not on the doors this time on me. A faint, invisible pressure, a sensation like claws brushing my skin in a warning, or perhaps a testing of boundaries. I flinched, startled, and when I turned, he was there, just beyond the reach of the porch light, looking at me with those piercing eyes. You feel it, he said softly, almost amused, though the warmth in his tone was laced with something darker. I don't understand, I whispered, my pulse racing. What is happening? Everything is happening because of who I am, he replied, the shadows bending around him as he stepped closer. And who you are becoming. There was a hint of something dangerous in his voice, something primal and irresistible. My chest tightened, torn between curiosity and dread. Every instinct screamed that he was not safe, that the pull I felt was both a gift and a warning. And then he showed me another fragment of himself. It was a simple gesture, almost casual. He raised a hand, and the shadows at the edges of the yard twisted and flowed as if alive, coiling around the trunks of the trees. A faint glow emanated from the mist, illuminating him in a spectral light. His skin shimmered, almost silver in the moonlight, and his eyes flared briefly, a burst of raw power that made the hair on my arms rise. I stumbled backward, clutching the baby. What are you? I gasped, fear and fascination warring within me. He lowered his hand, the shadows retreating, and stepped closer again, his expression unreadable. I told you. Only a fragment, he said, his voice low and deliberate. You are not ready for the truth. Not yet. I wanted to argue, to demand the answers that burned behind my eyes, that the tension in his presence held me silent. I could feel the danger coiled within him, the depth of power that I had glimpsed. And a part of me wanted to run, but another part wanted to surrender. to step closer and understand everything. Yet, with every revelation, a shadow of doubt crept in. If he was capable of such power, then why did he remain hidden in the shadows for so long? What had he not told me? What could he do that I didn't yet see? My mind raced with questions, each one prickling my skin with unease. The baby stirred, sensing my tension. I whispered to her, trying to calm both of us, but my thoughts remained tangled in fear and fascination. He knelt briefly, studying her with an intensity that made me flinch. And then his gaze returned to mine. "You are tied to her," he said softly, almost as if reading my mind. "And through her, to me. That is why you are here. That is why you cannot ignore what is coming." I swallowed hard. "But can I trust you?" I asked, the words slipping out before I could stop them. He paused, his expression flickering. For a moment, the warmth in his eyes softened, and I thought I saw something human there, a vulnerability that mirrored my own. "Trust," he said slowly, "is a luxury in my world, and yet you have it, whether you realize it or not." His words should have reassured me, but instead they left a cold shadow across my heart. The power I glimpsed, the fragments of his true nature, hinted at danger I could barely comprehend. How could I trust someone who existed in shadows I could not enter? Someone whose life spanned centuries, whose strength dwarfed mine, and whose motives remained partially hidden. The tension between us grew with every encounter. His presence was both a shield and a threat, a constant push and pull that left me dizzy. I wanted to lean into it, to surrender to the connection, but the shadows whispered warnings I could not ignore. There were cracks in the bond now, subtle and fragile, yet undeniable. I found myself wandering the yard at night, tracing the faint carvings and symbols that had appeared on the trees. Each one pulsed with a strange energy, a reminder of the force I had invited into my life. And with each symbol I felt the tug of him closer, an invisible thread weaving between us. Fragile and taut dot, then came a sound that made my blood run cold, a low growl. Soft at first, then rising in intensity from the far edge of the forest. The baby stirred in my arms, and I froze, heart hammering. He appeared instantly, stepping between us and the source of the growl. His eyes flared and the shadows around him shifted, forming a protective barrier that made the air itself seem alive. "You are not safe," he said, voice low, dangerous and urgent. "And yet you are still here." I nodded, swallowing my fear, but the mistrust lingered. His power was undeniable, his presence intoxicating, yet the fragments I had glimpsed hinted at secrets I couldn't yet name. How much of him was guardian, and how much was something else entirely? How could I surrender to the pull between us when shadows and danger clung to him as tightly as they clung to me? He stepped back, the shadows retreating with him, leaving me trembling, the baby in my arms and a storm of uncertainty swirling in my chest. I wanted to call after him, to demand answers, to bridge the gap between fear and fascination. But my voice caught, silent against the weight of what I had seen. For the first time, I understood that the bond between us, magnetic and undeniable as it was, could not erase doubt. The fragments of his true self, the power, the danger, the ancient presence cast long shadows over my trust. I was drawn to him, helplessly and irresistibly, yet a part of me feared the world he inhabited. And in that fear, I realized a truth I could not deny. The connection between us was far from simple. It was beautiful and terrifying, irresistible and forbidden. And it was only just beginning. The night settled over the yard, cool and heavy with mist. I held the baby closer, tracing her tiny fingers, and stared at the edge of the forest where he had disappeared. The pull between us remained, silent and insistent, a thread I could not break. But now it was shadowed with mistrust. and I knew that the deeper I allowed myself to go, the more I would risk losing not just my heart, but everything I had ever known. The collision of worlds had begun, and I was caught in the middle, torn between fear and fascination, trust and doubt, desire and danger, and yet I could not look away. I tried to push it away. I really did. Every fiber of my being screamed that this hymn was dangerous, forbidden, something I should resist. But the pull was relentless, threading through my thoughts, tugging at my heart, and curling around every beat of my pulse. The nights were the hardest. Sleep became a blurred boundary between reality and dreams. In the darkness, the forest returned, silver mist curling around my feet, and there he was taller, stronger, his eyes glowing amber with that impossible power. Sometimes he reached for me, his hands almost tangible in the dream, yet I could never touch him. Other times he watched from a distance, calm, patient, a predator restrained only by invisible rules I couldn't comprehend. I would wake, heart racing, hands trembling, the baby safe beside me, and the world felt painfully ordinary. And yet, the ordinary was unbearable. The memory of him, the pull, the intensity, the forbidden's fascination lingered like a weight pressing down on my chest. I found myself pacing the house, murmuring to the baby, whispering words I barely understood, as if speaking them aloud might untangle the tangle of desire and fear inside me during the day. I tried to focus on the mundane, but the pull was ever present. Shadows seemed to flicker with his presence. The wind seemed to carry his voice, and every subtle movement in the house made me think he had returned. I would step toward the edge of the yard, feeling the magnetic draw in my chest, then jerk back, reminding myself of the danger, the mystery, the uncertainty that surrounded him. But resistance only made the pull stronger. Found myself walking in the forest one evening, the baby asleep in her carrier. The mist curled thick around the trees, silver light spilling across the underbrush, and I felt the unmistakable tug of him. My legs moved on their own, as if the forest itself guided me toward him, despite my mind screaming to turn back. And then he was there. He stepped from the mist, silent, powerful, and my heart faltered at the sight of him. The amber of his eyes glowed softly, but the intensity in his gaze left me breathless. He studied me, and I felt as though he could see every thought, every doubt, every desire twisting in my chest. "You should not be here alone," he said, his voice low and calm, yet carrying an authority that made my body respond before my mind could think. I can't stay away," I admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "No matter how hard I try." A faint smile tugged at his lips, almost gentle, almost tender. "I wondered how long it would take before you admitted it," he murmured. "The pull is not yours alone. It has always been mine as well." My chest tightened at his words, the combination of danger and desire coiling in my stomach. "Why?" I asked, shaking my head. "Why me? Why now?" "Because you are bound to what is coming," he said softly. "Bound to her, and through her, to me. The connection exists whether you fight it or not." I swallowed hard, fear and longing colliding in my chest. I wanted to step back, to flee, to resist the temptation that twisted through my veins. And yet, I couldn't. The pull was magnetic, irresistible. It wrapped around me like a second skin, whispering promises I wasn't supposed to hear. "You do not understand," I whispered. "I could be in danger. The baby. I can't risk her." His gaze softened slightly, and he stepped closer, the shadows bending around him. "You will never face this alone," he said. "But you must decide, will you deny what you feel or accept it?" The words were a challenge and a promise, and I felt the tension in my chest deepen. Desire, forbidden and dangerous, surged through me like wildfire. Every instinct screamed at me to run, yet every heartbeat urged me to move closer. I was caught in a storm of emotions I could not untangle: love, fear, fascination, and temptation. That night I dreamed again. The forest stretched endless beneath a silver moon, mist curling at my feet. He appeared, silent, and I felt the pull stronger than ever. In the dream, I walked toward him, drawn as if by gravity, though a part of me wanted to stop. The pull became unbearable, a force I could not resist, and every step brought me closer to something I knew I shouldn't want. He reached for me, his hand hovering inches from mine, and the connection between us crackled like lightning through my veins. I wanted to run my fingers along his, to touch, to feel, to surrender, but fear gripped me. I knew that crossing this boundary could change everything, could alter the fragile world I had built for the baby in me. And yet, I wanted it. When I awoke, my body trembled and the baby stirred in her crib. The memory of the dream clung to me like a second skin. Impossible to ignore. The pull was no longer just in my mind, it was in my body, my instincts, the very air around me. Every shadow in the room seemed to hum with the memory of him. I knew I could not fight it much longer. The next evening, I found myself at the edge of the forest again, the pull almost unbearable. My steps carried me forward, despite the fear curling in my stomach. And then he appeared, stepping from the mist with that impossible grace, eyes glowing with the molten intensity that had haunted my dreams. "You've come," he said softly, almost amused. "Despite everything you fear." I faltered, my heart hammering. "I can't stop." He stepped closer, closer than ever, and I felt the pull of him like a current running through my very soul. The shadows curled around us, protective and alive, and I realized that the line between danger and desire had vanished. I wanted him. I needed him. And I knew in that moment that resisting was no longer an option. I shouldn't. I whispered, my voice breaking, "But I can't." He smiled faintly, a dangerous, magnetic curve of lips that made my chest ache. "Then don't," he said, and I felt the pull tighten, binding me to him in ways I could neither resist nor fully understand. And there, under the silver light of the moon, surrounded by shadows and the whispers of the forest, I realized I was facing a temptation I could not ignore. Desire forbidden, dangerous, and impossible but utterly irresistible. The pull between us had become unbearable, magnetic and relentless. Yet I could no longer ignore the shadows that lurked beyond the edges of our fragile world. Danger had begun to seep into my life. Subtle at first, an unexplained growl in the night. A shadow that moved independently of any source. Symbols etched deeper into the trees around our home. But now it was escalating. I first noticed it in town. The whispers returned, this time louder, more pointed. People I had never seen before watched from the corners of streets and alleyways, their eyes sharp and calculating. One man, tall and dark-haired, had lingered in the market for days, watching me as though I were prey. When our eyes met, a flicker of recognition passed over his face, and then he vanished into the crowd. My pulse hammered as I realized I was being followed at home. The air seemed heavier, charged with a tension I could not name. The shadows no longer simply lingered, they moved. They twisted toward the house in unnatural patterns, curling around the porch and slipping beneath the doors, as if testing our defenses. The baby sensed it too, waking more frequently, her tiny body stiff with unease even in sleep. He appeared that night, as always, emerging from the mist at the edge of the forest. The pull of him was immediate, suffocating, and yet comforting. He stepped forward, powerful and graceful, and I felt my breath catch in my chest. "Something is coming," he said, his voice low, threaded with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "Forces I have not faced in centuries are stirring. And you are caught in the middle. Why me?" I asked, clutching the baby tighter. "Why now?" "Because of what you carry," he replied, eyes fixed on the shadows beyond. "Because of her." He nodded toward the baby. "And because of what I am." The words were a warning and a confession, and I felt the weight of them press against my chest. My mind raced. I had known danger lurked, but I had not understood the scope. Now it was clear. His past was bleeding into the present, and I and the baby were caught in its path. The first real encounter came the following evening. A low growl echoed from the forest, this one deeper, more vicious than any I had heard before. I froze, the baby clutching my chest, and from the shadows emerged the creature, a wolf, larger than any natural animal, its eyes burning red and teeth bared. It paused at the edge of the yard, staring directly at me, and I felt a primal terror surge through my body. He appeared instantly, stepping between us with a power that radiated like a living force. The shadows swirled around him, forming a protective barrier, and the wolf hissed, snarled, and backed away, unwilling to cross the invisible line. "You cannot face this alone," he said, voice low and commanding. "And yet, you have already faced more than you realize." I nodded, trembling, feeling both the thrill and the fear. The pull between us was still there, magnetic and consuming, but the reality of the threat was undeniable. I could no longer pretend that his world and mine could coexist peacefully. Over the next few days, the signs multiplied. Symbols appeared etched into our doors, windows, and even the baby's toys. Shadows moved in unnatural patterns, whispering my name when no one was near. And always, lurking behind the danger, was him watching, protecting, drawing me closer while revealing just enough of his power to remind me how perilous it was to be near him. Then came the message. An unexpected visitor at the edge of the forest. A figure cloaked in darkness, leaving behind a single ominous note. Written in sharp, deliberate strokes was a warning. "She is yours for now, but all debts are paid in shadows." My hands shook as I read it, realizing that the forces converging around us were not only powerful, they were personal. They knew of him, of me, of the bond that was forming, and they were testing it. I turned to him instinctively, and he was there, silent and commanding, watching my reaction. "They know," he said simply, his amber eyes flaring briefly. "And they will come." "Who?" I asked, fear threading through my voice. "Enemies from my past," he replied, the shadows around him tightening as if echoing his words. "Those who once challenged me, who were denied, and who will not forgive easily. They see you as a weakness, my weakness, and they will exploit it." The revelation sent a shiver down my spine. I had known he was powerful, ancient, dangerous, but now the scale of the threat became tangible. We were not just dealing with curiosity or subtle warnings. The forces from his past were real, and they were coming for us. The night deepened, shadows stretching across the yard as the wind picked up. The baby slept unaware, but I felt every nerve in my body alert. Every instinct screamed that this was only the beginning, that the calm before had been an illusion. "I don't know if I can do this," I admitted, voice barely a whisper, trembling as I clutched the baby. "I'm just ordinary. I don't belong in this." "You do belong," he said firmly, stepping closer. His presence was overwhelming, magnetic yet protective. "You may not understand it now, but you are part of something much larger. The bond between you, the baby, and me. It is ancient, and it is powerful. And it will be tested. I shivered, torn between awe and fear. The pull between us remained, irresistible and consuming. Yet the shadow of danger was now undeniable. I realized the stakes were far higher than I had imagined. It was no longer just about curiosity, desire, or forbidden attraction. Survival and the survival of the baby hung in the balance. A rustle in the forest made me jump. He stepped forward, protective, his amber eyes scanning the shadows. The wind carried a faint growl, low and threatening. I felt the pull tighten, a tether between us, binding me to him even as fear threatened to overwhelm me. "This is only the beginning," he said, voice low, filled with warning. "Prepare yourself. They will not stop until they have tested every bond, every secret, every weakness. And you are the center of it." I nodded, fear and anticipation twisting in my chest. The pull, the fascination, the forbidden connection. Everything I had felt for him now carried a new weight. It was no longer just temptation. It was survival, danger, and the undeniable truth that his past had come to claim the present. As the shadows deepened, and the wind whispered through the trees, I realized the threat was no longer abstract. It was here, real, and we would have to face it together or be consumed by it. I don't remember driving home that night. My hands were stiff on the wheel, and the road ahead blurred into a ribbon of shadows and headlights. All I could hear were Rowan's last words echoing in my head. "You were never meant to be ordinary." I'd laughed then, half in disbelief, half in defense. But he hadn't laughed back. Now, the air in my small cottage felt wrong, too still, too aware. The fireplace hissed low, but I could feel something else humming beneath it, like a pulse beneath my skin. When I reached for the light switch, the bulb flickered violently before dying out. The room fell into darkness. That was when I saw it. The photo on my mantel, the one of my mother holding me as a baby, was glowing faintly. A soft crimson shimmer around its edges, pulsing like a heartbeat. I froze. For a moment, I thought I was imagining it. But then, as I stepped closer, I noticed something I had never seen before. My mother's necklace, the silver pendant she never took off, was shaped like a crescent moon split down the middle. And etched faintly into it was a mark I'd seen before. Rowan's. Mark. The same symbol that burned faintly on his wrist the night he saved me from the truck, the twisting crescent. Surrounded by ancient runes that had pulsed as if alive. My breath caught. I reached for the photo frame, but before my fingers touched it, a whisper slithered through the air. "You felt it, haven't you?" I turned sharply. No one. Just the quiet hiss of the fire and the frantic beat of my heart. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to steady myself. "Who's there?" The whisper came again, this time closer, older, like breath scraping against time itself. "You can't hide from what you are." "Child of the moon." A chill crawled down my spine. I stumbled toward my mother's old chest, the one I hadn't dared open since she passed. Something in me screamed not to, but my trembling hands ignored reason. I lifted the lid. Inside lay folded letters, brittle and yellowed with age, tied together with a strip of leather. I untied them, the smell of lavender and dust rising like memory. The first one was dated 27 years ago, around the time I was born. "My dearest Lila, if you are reading this, it means the truth can no longer stay buried. You were never meant for the quiet life I tried to give you. You carry within you a bond older than kingdoms, stronger than death. Guard it, fear it, for those who come from his bloodline never live untouched. Your father was not what the world believes he was. He came from beyond the veil, the Alpha King of the Crimson Moon. And you, my child, you are the bridge between worlds. Forgive me for hiding it. It was the only way to keep you alive. The letter fell from my hands. I staggered back, my heart hammering so violently I could barely breathe. Alpha King? Bloodline? Bridge between worlds? The words twisted through my mind, sharp and impossible. Rowan's voice returned to me in fragments, his strange hesitation whenever he looked at me too long. The way his pulse had matched mine when he'd grabbed my hand. The way the moon seemed to tremble when he was near Dot. It couldn't be real Dot. And yet, it explained everything Dot the dreams. The whispers. The sense that something had always been watching me, waiting for me to wake up. Dot tears blurred my eyes. Why didn't you tell me, Mom? I whispered into the silence. Why did you let me think I was just ordinary? The fire flared behind me louder, brighter. I turned just in time to see a figure form within the flames. A man cloaked in smoke and silver light. His voice was deep, ancient, familiar. Because ordinary was never your destiny. My knees nearly gave out. Who are you? The figure tilted his head, and in the flicker of the fire I saw his eyes amber and burning. The same eyes Rowan had. Your father, he said simply. The world spun. No, I whispered. That's not possible. Every heartbeat you've ever felt that wasn't yours, every whisper in the dark. It was me calling through the bond you carry. The blood of the Alpha runs through your veins, Lila. I shook my head, desperate for air. No. That's madness. But even as I said it, something inside me responded, a low hum beneath my skin, a heat that spread from my chest to my fingertips. The pendant in the photo glowed brighter. My father's voice softened. You've begun to awaken. The veil between worlds is thinning. The blood calls to its own, and so does he. He. I croaked. Rowan, he said. The one who carries my mark. The one bound to you by blood and fate. My mind shattered into 1,000 shards. Bound to me. I remembered Rowan's touch, the way my pulse had leapt beneath his fingers, how his eyes had darkened with something that wasn't quite human. My father's form began to fade, breaking into smoke and sparks. You must choose soon, daughter of moon and man. If you walk his path, there is no return. Wait, I cried, stepping forward. Please, what does that mean? What happens if I do? But he was already gone. The fire dimmed, the whisper of his voice dissolving into the night. Only the faint glow of the crescent pendant remained, casting its light over the words in my mother's letter bridge between worlds. The storm outside rose, wind howling like 1,000 unseen wolves. My reflection in the window flickered, and for the briefest moment, my eyes glowed faintly gold. That was when I realized something terrifying, the danger I'd been running from wasn't outside. It was awakening inside me. The next morning, I woke to the sound of rain against the window, soft, steady, almost gentle. It should have comforted me. Instead, it only made the silence inside the cottage louder. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, my father's face fading into smoke, his voice echoing through the flames. The blood of the Alpha runs through your veins. Those words clung to me like frost, and beneath them, another whisper pulsed, steady as my heartbeat, the one bound to you by blood and fate. Rowan. When he appeared on my doorstep that morning, drenched and breathless, I wasn't surprised. Part of me had felt him coming long before I heard his footsteps. Lila, he said, his voice low and urgent. You weren't supposed to find out like this. I froze, my hand tightening on the doorframe. Then you knew? He hesitated. That pause told me everything. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thick with the scent of rain and betrayal. You knew what I was? What you are? All this time? His jaw tightened. I knew enough. Enough to keep you alive. Alive? I laughed bitterly. You've been feeding me lies, Rowan. Calling me ordinary while watching me walk through a world I didn't even understand. I was protecting you, he snapped, his voice breaking through the storm outside. If they knew who you were, what you are, they'd have torn this town apart to find you. Who? I demanded. Who's they? His gaze flicked toward the window, to the dark tree line beyond. For a moment, something feral moved behind his eyes. The Crescent Order, he said. The old council. They hunt anything with mixed blood. Wolves like me, and daughters like you. A chill crawled up my spine. You mean people like my father? Your father is the reason they hunt, Rowan said quietly. He broke every law of the Alpha realm by taking a human for a mate. The blood you carry, it's forbidden. Dangerous. My pulse roared in my ears. So you've been watching me all this time because you were ordered to? He stepped closer, his eyes softening. No, I watched you because I couldn't stay away. The words trembled between us, heavy and tender, but I couldn't let myself fall into them. Not now. You should have told me, I whispered. All of it. He ran a hand through his damp hair, exhaling sharply. If I'd told you, you'd have run. And the moment you ran, they'd have found you. The veil between worlds is thinning. You can feel it, can't you? I thought of the whispers, the fire, my father's voice. Yes, I admitted softly. But I don't even know who to trust anymore. He took another step toward me, close enough that I could feel the heat of his body. Then trust me, he said. Even if you hate me for it, trust that I'll keep you safe. For a heartbeat, I wanted to believe him, but then something flickered in his eyes, guilt, hesitation. Something deeper, and I knew there was more he wasn't saying. What aren't you telling me? I asked. He looked away. There's something you need to see first. He led me through the rain to the edge of the woods, the sky heavy and grey above us. The air smelled of wet earth and pine, but beneath it lingered something else metallic. Sharp dot when we reached a small clearing. I saw what he meant. Symbols burned into the ground, glowing faintly crimson. The same symbol from my mother's necklace, twisted into a spiral surrounded by strange runes. What is this? I whispered. It's a mark, Rowan said. A tracker. They've found you. I knelt, brushing my fingers over the warm soil. But how? No one even knows who I am. He didn't answer right away. The muscles in his jaw twitched. Rowan, I said sharply. Tell me the truth. Finally he spoke. Because I told them. The world stopped. My breath caught in my throat, disbelief freezing me in place. You. What? He raised his hands as if to calm me, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. I didn't mean to. I thought they just wanted to protect you. I didn't realize they'd mark your territory. They must have traced my link to you. I took a step back, the ground tilting beneath me. You betrayed me. It wasn't betrayal, he said, pain flickering across his face. It was a mistake. I was trying to stop a war. The rain came harder, slicing through the air like glass. My hands shook as I stared at the man I'd started to trust, the one who'd saved me, who'd made my pulse race, who'd made me believe I wasn't alone in this madness. And yet, he was the reason they'd found me. I could barely breathe. You said you'd keep me safe. I will, he insisted, stepping forward. I'll fix this. I'll make them think you've disappeared. Just come with me. I shook my head. I can't. Not now. Lila, please. But it was too late. Somewhere deep in the forest, a howl split the storm low, haunting, not quite human. Another answered. Closer this time. Rowan's head snapped toward the sound, his eyes flashing amber. "They're coming." I backed away, my heart pounding. "Your friends?" His silence was answer enough. I turned and ran. Branches whipped against my skin as I fled through the trees, the world a blur of rain and fear. Behind me, I heard Rowan shout my name, his voice roar. Desperate, but I didn't stop. Not until I reached the ridge overlooking the river. The water raged below, dark and wild, and for a moment I stood there, trembling, unsure if I was more terrified of what was chasing me, or of what I was becoming. Lightning flashed, and in its light I saw Rowan on the far side of the clearing, motionless, his eyes glowing like embers through the rain. He didn't move toward me. He didn't have to. The bond between us pulsed like a heartbeat, even from across the storm. "Trust me," he called out, his voice breaking through the thunder. "Even if you hate me." But trust felt like a luxury I no longer had, because in that moment, with the wolves' howls echoing through the night, I realized something I hadn't dared admit before. Maybe Rowan wasn't the only one peeping. Secrets, and maybe mine were even darker. I didn't stop, running until the rain turned the forest floor to mud and my lungs burned like fire. The storm had stripped the woods bare of sound, leaving only the rasp of my breath and the pounding of my heart. Every flash of lightning made me flinch, half expecting to see shapes moving between the trees, half expecting to see him. Rowan. His name was a wound in my chest. I trusted him. Against every warning, every instinct, I trusted the warmth in his eyes. And he'd led them straight to me. Now, I was running from the very man who said he'd protect me. I found shelter beneath a fallen pine, pressing my back to the damp bark. The air reeked of wet earth and fear. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to breathe through the ache in my ribs. But then, faintly through the wind, I heard it, a sound I couldn't mistake. A howl. Long, low, mournful, and close. I froze. Then another answered from the east, sharper, angrier. Not Rowan, the tone was wrong. The air vibrated with it, wild, ancient, furious. "They're coming." I crawled from the hollow, stumbling toward the ridge where the trees thinned. Below, I could see the lights of town, distant, trembling dots through the rain. Safety felt close enough to taste. I took a step forward, then stopped. Something was wrong. The forest had gone silent again. Not even the wind dared move. Then I saw them. 3 figures emerging from the darkness. Not quite wolves. Not quite human shadows in shifting forms. Their eyes glowed red like embers, and when they moved, the rain seemed to part for them. My heart nearly stopped. The crescent order. They'd found me. I stumbled backward, the mud sucking at my shoes. My mind screamed for me to run, but my body refused to move. The tallest of the 3 stepped forward, his voice slicing through the downpour. "Daughter of the Alpha King," he said, "your time among humans is over." I opened my mouth, but no words came out. My pulse roared in my ears. He smiled, cold and cruel. "You were supposed to be hidden, but your protector's loyalty was weaker than his desire." Rowan. The name hit me like a blade. "I don't know what you want," I managed to choke out. The leader tilted his head. "We want what's ours. You are the bridge between worlds. Your blood can open what's been closed for centuries. The Alpha realm will rise again." The rain lashed harder. I backed away, but one of them moved behind me, too fast, too quiet. His hand closed around my arm, ice cold and iron strong. I gasped, twisting, clawing at his grip. "Let me go." He laughed softly. "You've been touched by power you don't even understand. You think you can resist us?" Then the air split open with a roar. Rowan crashed from the trees like a storm in flesh and bone. His eyes burned gold, his teeth bared, his body shifting in flashes of fur and shadow. The Order warriors turned as he hit them like a force of nature, sending one crashing into a tree. "Run!" he shouted, voice rough, primal. I didn't move. I couldn't. My legs felt carved from stone as I watched the man who had betrayed me fight like he was willing to die for me. Lightning tore through the sky, illuminating the chaos, the claws, the snarls, the blur of movement. The scent of blood hit the air, sharp and metallic. "Go, Lila!" Rowan roared, slamming his shoulder into the leader. "Now!" Finally, instinct took over. I turned and ran through the mud, branches slashing my face. The sounds of battle followed me, snarls, roars, the sickening thud of flesh against earth. I stumbled toward the road, but as I broke through the trees, headlights cut across the rain. A car. For a split second, relief surged through me, until I saw who stepped out. Sheriff Ann. He was one of the few people in town who had been kind to me after the adoption scandal. A steady man, always calm, always smiling. But now, under the harsh white light, something was wrong with his face. His eyes gleamed faintly red. "Lila," he said, voice oddly smooth. "You're hurt. Come with me." Every instinct screamed no. Behind him. I could see the faint shimmer of a sigil burned into the hood of his car. The same crimson spiral I'd seen in the clearing. The Crescent Order. He wasn't human anymore. I backed away slowly. "You're one of them." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm one of the few trying to save you. The Alpha's daughter doesn't belong in this world. I'm not going anywhere with you." He sighed. "Then I'll take you myself." He moved faster than I could react. His hand clamped around my wrist like iron. I tried to twist free, but his strength was inhuman. Then, from the forest behind us, another roar. Rowan. N turned sharply, snarling, and I used the moment to rip free, stumbling backward toward the trees. But he was faster. He caught me again, pulling me close, his breath hot against my ear. "You think that beast can save you? He's the reason we found you in the first place." The words cut deeper than claws. I struggled, slamming my knee into his side, but he barely flinched. "Stop fighting, Lila. You don't understand the power you carry." Before he could drag me any farther, a blur of movement hit him from the side. Rowan. They tumbled into the mud, rolling, snarling, claws and teeth flashing in the stormlight. I fell to my knees, gasping, watching in horror as they fought. Rowan's eyes met mine briefly through the chaos gold, flickering with pain and fury. "Go," he shouted again. But I couldn't. I couldn't leave him. The sheriff twisted, plunging a silver blade into Rowan's side. Rowan howled, collapsing to one knee. "No," I screamed, grabbing a broken branch from the ground and striking the sheriff across the back of the head. He fell forward, stunned. I dropped beside Rowan, blood mixing with rain on his skin. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. "Why did you come back?" I whispered. "You should have run." His hand found mine, trembling. "Because you're mine to protect, even if you never forgive me." Tears burned my eyes. Before I could answer, a howl rose again, this time from every direction. The shadows in the trees moved closer. Dozens of glowing eyes stared back at me. The rest of the Order. We were surrounded. Rowan tried to stand, but the wound dragged him down again. His hand tightened around mine. "Lila, whatever happens, don't let them take you." I shook my head frantically. "No, I'm not leaving you." The red-eyed figures began to circle, their footsteps silent against the mud. The leader, bloodied but alive, stepped forward and smiled. "The bridge has awakened," he said softly. The bloodline is ready. Rowan's grip weakened. The storm raged around us, lightning splitting the sky. And I knew, in that moment, there was no way out. No one was coming. And whatever they wanted, I couldn't run from it any longer.